All right, well, welcome. I call the February 29th Strategic Plan Update Task Force meeting to order. How many times do you call it February 29th meeting to order? Let's see, so tonight we have, I didn't count actually, just
13.
Okay, we have 13 task force members present. And Jill, could you help me with excused absence? Oh, you put it here. Okay, Vice Chair Chris Spritely is out sick this evening and has an excused absence. And Mara Colley is also sick, but she has joined us over Teams. Let's see, we have, alternate Scott Hall will be serving as an alternate for Chris Spritely at this meeting. And let's see, we have several other alternates who are serving as alternates at tonight's meeting. We encourage you to participate in informal discussion. However, participation in motions, debate, or voting will be limited to regular members. I don't believe we have any voting or motions today. And then now as we move into public comments, is there anyone from the public who would like to make comment?
We've not had any public comment entered on the sign-in sheet. We have two members of the public on the line this evening. If you would like to make public comment, could you raise your hand or indicate in the chat that you would like to make public comment? We have no indication currently.
Steve, just raise it.
Oh, Steve, a thumbs up. Excellent. Okay, Preeti, you can go ahead and.
Okay, well, so there's a few guidelines for public comments. Please direct public comments to the whole board or commission or task force, not individuals. While this is not a question and answer session, we will contact you to follow up if needed. And when recognized, state your name, address, and relationship to the city. Speak clearly and pause frequently, and limit your comments to 5 minutes. Okay, and then I see Steve, was it Steve Pereira has public comment? Please go ahead, Steve.
So this is Steve Pereira. I lived in Old Town for 15-ish years or so. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so thanks for gathering. I appreciate people's time and effort to try to make Issaquah a better place. So thank you to each of you for contributing your time and your thoughts and your efforts to this endeavor. Kind of a high level thought that occurs to me is this strategic plan was first put together a number of years ago, and in some ways it seems a little broad to me in that we're trying to do a lot of things and trying to be everything to everybody, and maybe we're not focused enough on our core values or the things that are really important that Issaquah holds near and dear and true to our collective hearts. I think of the idea of weighted averages, and for example, if you look at a syllabus for a college course, 50% of your grade is on tests and 20% is on quizzes and 10% is on class participation and 15% is on group projects. I think, and the city council later we're going to kind of go through and kind of pick and choose from this category or this bucket. We're trying to spread ourselves too thin. We need to look at better what are the things that are important to who we are and where we want to go and how we get there. I'm not here so much to talk about examples of we ought to not do this or ought to do more of this, but the idea of how we get to where we want to go needs to be more focused, so we're using our resources of time, money, and talent, including staff time and citizens' involvement, to better meet and become the things that we want to become. And so I think there should be kind of maybe a narrowing down or a weighted focus on the things that we do, so we better prioritize who we are and how we get there. Otherwise, we're not going to get there. The things that we think are important don't get staffed or don't get financially resourced to happen. An example that comes to mind is the green necklace that we talked about in the last CIP. There was only $500,000 over the next 6 years planned for that. That kind of seems like a high strategic value to me, and was kind of the focus and forecast of where we're going. So I just wanted to give an example of something that should have some importance and focus. So again, thank you all for your time and your efforts, and I look forward to hearing more and being involved. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comments, Steve. We appreciate them. Okay, if there are no other public comments, I think we can move to the first agenda item, which is opening comments. And I believe we have Dale or Administrator Bobkowitz.
And I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Wally Bobkowitz. I'm the city administrator, and I'm here pitch hitting for Mayor Mary Lou Pauley, who's, I guess, here as well. Mayor is a little bit under the weather tonight, so she asked me to come and say a few words. At 4 o'clock, she was going to send me a few bullet points, and at 5:30, I got several paragraphs. So if you'll allow me, I'm going to read the mayor's comments, as well as a text message that I received driving from my home in the woods here. So the mayor's given a lot of thought to this the last several hours. She thanks you for giving up your time on this important task force and knows there are many places you can choose to spend your time, and she's delighted you chose to work on this update. The update to our Issaquah, the community strategic plan, is the mayor's top priority for 2024. The city adopted this plan in 2019, and it changed the way we approach public service in Issaquah. It created new processes in city administration to make the strategic plan actionable, including a process wheel, which you will get to know very well in this task force, which you'll review during the task force, showing you how city councils engage with the strategic plan throughout the year and during budget deliberations. Our city team developed performance metrics and collected data to see if plan objectives and actions are truly moving the needle. It's not just about saying you want to strengthen and support the community. It's about demonstrating we are achieving the outcomes the community wants. And if not, we are flexible and committed enough to pivot to more effective strategies and actions. The mayor is proud to tell you that we can show you how we are doing in all of these goal areas. And this is a new way of working in our city government that began with the adoption of the strategic plan. The city has a strong administrative team and a supportive, engaged city council. It is rewarding for the mayor to work with these talented individuals. The strategic plans are community driven and express the vision of our collective community, identifying where they want to see Issaquah in the years ahead. 40,000 residents and tens of thousands of businesses call Issaquah home. They want their city to be welcoming, strong, thriving, diverse, and supportive, and they continue to provide us feedback on how we're doing. The mayor selected each of you for this important task, not because you bring a particular knowledge or passion or background to the table. I think she meant to say because you bring particular knowledge or passion or background to the table. I didn't have a chance to proofread either. As mayor, she's always envisioned government as an upside down triangle with the decision makers on the bottom in service and the community on top, wide end of the triangle. The city exists to ensure that we are well served. She put this task force together to make those who are already volunteers with those who are eager to volunteer in service to the community. Your challenge will be to channel the community vision into these updated recommendations to the council. It's not about advocating for a particular area as it is about assessing how our community makes progress in all of our goal areas in accordance with our community vision. You were selected because we need your conversations and recommendations to inform the council and the administration's work in updating our plan to ensure we meet this collective vision. Frequently, the mayor talks with other elected officials to remind them that if we do something for our community without our community, we are doing it to them. The opposite of that is using their vision to inform the update of our strategic plan. She's confident that you are all up to the challenge, and a successful outcome upon adoption is that the community sees their fingerprints and hears their voices in the recommendations that come out of this group. She also wanted me to add a little bit about alternates. Who are the alternates here? So as far as the mayor is concerned, being an alternate, you still have to pull your weight in this. That it's not just a matter of on a jury trial waiting for someone to get sick or something, and then all of a sudden you have to pay attention. The mayor's expectation is that the alternates participate and are engaged as well as the regular members of the task force. And I'll just add, reinforce that this is the mayor's top priority. She's in the 6th year of her mayoralty, and last year she spent a good amount of time thinking about what she wanted 24 and 25 to look like. We're heading into a budget process later this year, and she really feels that a close look at the strategic plan really will help, not only reinvigorate the good work that was done in 2018, 2019 when the plan was originally adopted, but also then give us some steam going into a budget cycle that has some questions to it. Not only issues with revenue, which I'm sure at some point we will talk about, but the needs of the community, and the needs are ever changing. And so the mayor really sees this task force as being the leading edge of those discussions as she and the council work in the summer and fall on that 25-26 budget. So on her behalf, I'll say again, thank you for volunteering. Dale Obarki-Krimp, the assistant to the city administrator, is going to be your erstwhile staff person, and thank her for her work in getting all this together. And I'm happy to answer any questions on behalf of the mayor or on behalf of myself.
Great. Well, you're going to have a little bit more time here in just a moment. But I'm gonna walk through the agenda for this evening, and then we're going to get to know a little bit of who's in the room. We certainly can't do this without grounding in the folks that will be part of this conversation over the course of the next couple of months. So our agenda for this evening, we are going to start with a little bit of an icebreaker in just a moment. We'll get up and move around and talk a little bit. Then we'll talk about the purpose and objectives of this particular group. City Administrator Bob Fwitz gave a great high level. I want to give some more specifics, the places that we are going to dive deeper and the places that we aren't really going to dive deeper. I think it's important to know that from the outset so that we can all have a clear idea of what will success look like for this task force. Then Wally will provide a little bit of background on the strategic plan, its development, how it's been used, lessons learned over the last number of years. And then we will do a deep dive. So you can already see up around the room some on big paper elements of our strategic plan document. And we're going to take some time to look more closely at the opportunities, background, objectives, and potential actions as they were named both in the original plan and in the update to the plan that occurred in 2021. And then we'll close out. The plan is to be done by right around 8. So even though we got started a little bit late, I think we should be well on time. Any questions before we dive in? Okay. So icebreaker. There are many ways that we could do this. And I wonder if you've sat in a circle and gone around and had everyone say their name and their this and that and their epic history with strategic planning and all of their job accolades, even if you've only asked for one word. And you spend more time in those circles thinking about, gosh, what am I going to say when they get to me, than really listening to the other people in the circle. And so we're going to do this a little bit differently tonight, because I think the intent is to be grounded tonight, not just in the plan, but in the people in this room, the people that we're going to be in conversation with for these next 4 3/4 meetings. And so the way that we're going to do this is we're going to, in a moment, get into groups of 3 or 4. And we're going to share names, what neighborhood we live in, your answer to the question, why Issaquah, and the perspectives that you feel like you are bringing to this task force. The perspectives, the experience, the identities that you bring to this conversation. And I'll explain a little bit more about why that's important when we come back together. But I would invite you to not just share, but to be ready and ask permission, but to be ready to share back to the group something that you learned from someone that you connected with, that inspired you, that made you think, that made you excited for the work that we're going to be doing together. So we'll do this in a really fancy way, which is we're going to count off by 4. I think that should work for us. And then you're going to find the other folks that share the same number that you counted off by, and you can move to anywhere in this room that you'd like to. You can do that in any format that you'd like to. If you want to say 1, 1, 1 over and over again until people come to you, give it a whirl. We'll see how it works. But we'll start with Katie and we'll do 1, 1,
2,
3, 4.
1, 2, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1.
You won't believe how many groups of adults can't do that well, and you just killed it. Yeah. So go ahead and find the other folks that have your number, and we're going to take about 5 minutes in those groups.
Looking for 4s.
4.
Victoria's 4. Yeah. We don't know if we've ever met in person. Yeah.
One more, or we extra the last one?
And then I moved to. Let's see what else. Started a couple weeks, so I don't need it.
Okay.
After we. For Amazon. Retired.
My brother is autistic and lives in a family home.
So I became. So what background?
Yeah, so we had a great place there.
Help guide that.
University of Washington and Seattle University. Yeah.
Manitoba.
I have lived my entire life in county. It's not something but
Why is it?
I live.
Irish walks and Virgin. I get now. I had to. My perspective is that I felt that for 15 years. I guess the.
That's gone really well.
Number 1 is traffic.
Because the city.
I'll do it right now.
Also like.
Yeah.
So.
What perspective somebody.
No stop.
As any of us. And then so the pure science. Respect fibrate is the next one. Look at it. Average 12 like. Sometimes. I pay for it. It doesn't start. I don't do this. So yeah. But it's well. Before you start, I think you have walking by. My house is about. I want it all. Victor, respect. Yeah, I live. It's ranges of all town.
But I also.
Yeah. Oh, you're south of the state.
I'm quite surprised, the most recent of this.
So.
Prior to that.
Well, anyways, why am I using? I've been here only 7 years. Changed. Amazon hires me and brought me to. Yes, I know. Find out, right?
And, so my parents did that.
We rented and.
I don't think that's too many times. Or, you know.
March 1st. I said, I think the day after, I'm gonna have one thing on. I'm not gonna be. Both my kids. That's a big problem.
But, you know, close enough.
My perspective. Well,
Transit is there.
it's the old enough. It's just in a 19 years.
Yeah, I made my. And now it's way part of my. Time after being. Carry y'all with me through most of my time. Like just a month ago. Well, his parents now, they used to have down the road to Mineral after it's now, it's 2 miles for them to get to.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, exactly. So right at that.
On 100 miles. Yeah.
So it's all in the house. Yeah.
But,
Oh, yeah, research, yeah. But it will be to get, I mean, easy to get right on the road. I'm right by, I live the 554 south, like, not very. I can get to City Hall.
Yeah, so it's much kind of the same. Quiet. It's not a jury.
We're gonna come back together in about 30 seconds.
Well, when we do someday.
Y'all packed?
Did you want me to join the group? I didn't think.
You don't have to. We're just visiting. Yeah. I'll get you out of here shortly. She was on a hot mic though.
It is what it is.
Okay, everyone. Go ahead and wrap up your conversations and come on back to our. I'll back.
Right, I guess that's our thing.
Yeah.
You're already fact checking. Are you?
Well, I'm fact checking my own fact checks.
Oh, okay.
So as you're coming back, I invite you to think about something that was shared with you that's sticking with you. Something either that's giving you a bit of energy in thinking about the conversations we're going to have, something that surprised you, something that inspired you as you got to know someone else in this group. And we'll just hold a couple minutes. Feel free to share out.
I'll start. I shared that my youngest has autism, and I heard from Katie that, thanks for sharing. Your brother is an adult that is living with it, and that's one of mine and my wife's biggest concerns day to day. What will the future hold? Right, preparing for that for him, so that hearing that actually was a great thing, which I'll share with my wife too. So thanks.
Yeah, a perspective you're both bringing.
Want to do a round robin?
I mean, we'll hear from a few folks. Not everyone needs to feel like they have to share.
I'll just go. For me, it was Victoria's 1,000 points of contact, which that's inspiring. And again, obviously she has a unique role in the city, but to hear so many different voices, be able to take that in and then put that into policy, I think that's intriguing. And then Jamie's love for the environment, which is such a critical part of our community. So both those things I found inspiring.
Something I found inspiring about our group was the diversity of age, from somebody who's finishing up their associates to Scott, who's retired, and then Victor and I, who are still in the midst of our working careers. And perspective of, I've lived here my whole life, and Victor's lived all sorts of places. And seeing what cities can be like other places, and that was great.
And the exact opposite of that in some ways. Adam and TJ and I have all been here for a while. We're all involved in engineering or computer sciences, 3 middle-aged white guys. So, just kind of the other end of the spectrum. Sometimes randomly you get combinations of people that are more heterogeneous and more homogeneous. Adam talked about, analysis of systems, right? And how complex systems, the challenge of analyzing how complex systems are organized, patterns that emerge, something that I think engineers and computer scientists look at. And it just makes me think about the use of metrics. And Jeff Bezos, my skip boss, gave a interview did a 2-hour interview about a month ago where he talked about metrics and measuring things, and the life cycle of a metric, and when is it still valid and whatnot. I think that's very interesting. I think the metrics, we were just discussing it at a council meeting the other night, the role of metrics. And I think it's going to be very, very important as we go through this to understand how we're going to measure what comes out of this process.
I love that we're already getting grounded in not only the folks we're going to be in these conversations with, but we're already starting to make connections to the content that we're going to dive into together. So let's discuss a little bit more about what that will look like. So the purpose and objectives of this task force.
There are two main, none of this should be a surprise because you all saw this in the packet that I sent ahead of time, but there are two main objectives of this task force. One is to develop a recommendation for the administration and for city council on a revision or update to the strategic plan's objectives and actions. The second is to sort of make a recommendation about what further community engagement related to this update could and should look like. That's what we're aiming to do. And I think just as important as saying what we're aiming to do, I think it's important to say what we're not going to do. So we are not looking to change the goal areas. We're not looking to add a goal area, to take away a goal area, to all of a sudden call environmental stewardship something slightly different. In talking with the mayor, those still feel relevant. These goal areas still feel like the ones that we are moving towards. And as we, in our next meeting, talk about the progress that we've made so far, these are areas that we still have progress to make. We do, however, need to take a closer look at both the objectives. There are some objectives that we have made a good amount of progress on, and it's worth asking, does this objective need to change slightly? Also, actions that need some updating. There are some that are complete, some that we have not taken those actions, and thus there's room for new actions to be added. There are some that are in progress right now, and there are some that are potentially missing, and maybe we're missing in the first conversation, and given that context has changed over the last 5 years, it's time to revisit what those actions are in particular. And these success measures, Councilmember Martz just brought this up in particular, but the measures themselves that are listed, and we'll get into diving into these at the bottom of each of these pages, and in addition to our citywide performance measurement plan, may not fully indicate progress towards the objectives and the goals that are outlined. Doing some fun things. So I want to ground us in sort of the 5 meetings that we'll have here. Tonight is all about getting grounded in the plan itself, in the folks in the room. I got a lot of really wonderful emails ahead of tonight's meeting that were like, hey, can you tell me, like, what have we made progress on? What are the other plans that I should be looking at? And I'm like, yes, we are going to do that March 14th. Can't wait. But first and foremost, making sure we understand the plan itself, the background on the plan, and also understand who we're at the table with tonight. On March 14th, we're going to dive into understanding that progress and also what is planned for the near future. So looking at some of the functional plans, some of the department level action plans and strategic plans, and we'll have more city staff in the room to be in conversation about those plans themselves. I know a little bit about a lot of things, but I imagine you will have questions that require someone who knows a lot about each of those things. Our third meeting will focus on, with that knowledge that we built, we're going to focus on refining the objectives and considering measurement. I have a personal passion for performance measurement. And one of the big questions I've been asking is, how are we ensuring that our success measures help us understand the progress we're making on our objectives? Not just progress in general, but measuring progress on our objectives. Meeting 4 will be looking at aligning actions and prioritizing those actions. So not just naming actions, but I heard from a few different people as both in my quad that I was in and did some powerful eavesdropping with these ears, a desire to think about what are we prioritizing? We also heard that from Steve on our public comment. How are we prioritizing? And then our final meeting will really be about finalizing our recommendations and discussing what continued engagement should look like. So this is one group of people, but we know this is a strategic plan that impacts not just the 40,051 residents of Issaquah, but anyone that visits our community, businesses within our community. So what does engagement look like beyond this task force conversation? I've never presented in the current format that I'm presenting in. It doesn't allow me to put my slides forward as easily as I would have liked. One last thing before we start, I pass it over to Wally and he has a little bit about the history of the strategic plan. There are many ways that we could approach this conversation, and I'm going to invite us to take a constructivist approach. Leaders and learners actively construct or make their own knowledge. There is no one right or wrong answer. What you know is based on what you experience. Everyone here is like, that's not groundbreaking, but you'd be surprised. And the diversity of your experience informs what you know to be true. Everyone in here has a different truth. All of those truths are valid and essential for the conversation we're going to be having and for the recommendations you're ultimately going to be making. And so I think it's really important that we think about the way that we traditionally have these types of conversations about strategy, and that we invite a different approach. So traditionally, there would be a sort of a worshiping of the written word. We see something in writing and we take that to be truth. I'm going to invite you to think about strategy happening, not because it's in a document, not because it's in a slide deck, but because it's part of the conversation that we're having as a group. Traditionally, we would seek a perfect answer. We want to get to the perfect recommendation. We want to have the perfect strategic plan. As a learning organization, that is certainly, perfection is not something that one can attain. And there will be mistakes and there will be growing pains, and we will disagree in this group. And I want to invite you to accept that you're going to disagree. We don't need to, when we come to our recommendations, we can seek consensus, and it is okay if we don't have the perfect recommendation at the end of this. And then the last thing I would invite us to think about is just to move away from trying to feel like we need to do things the right way. I would imagine, just because I know a few folks in this room, that there's a lot of expertise in here on how to do a strategic plan, how to write a strategic plan, how to develop a strategic plan. There's not one right way to do this. Same with performance measures, something I hold near and dear. There's not one right way to develop performance measures. There are many different ways. And I would invite us to recognize that while we have opinions about what we think is the right way to do something, that there are many ways to get to our recommendations. So at times it might feel uncomfortable. It might feel like, oh gosh, we've talked about this already, or oh gosh, I already know this, or I need to have everything in front of me. And I would just invite you to be okay with a little bit of discomfort as we move through what I imagine is going to be an exciting, but also sometimes a difficult process together. So just something to think about. I'm a big geek for adult learning and development. And so I invite us to try on this constructivist approach. Every single person in here has deep value to add to this, whether or not you feel like you have these goal areas tattooed on your arms, or you've never seen a strategic plan before you looked at the posters on the wall. Everyone's got something to offer. So as a reminder, tonight we're getting grounded. We're getting grounded in who's in the room. We're getting grounded in the plan itself. On March 14th is when we're going to understand this progress, sort of looking at the actions here. What have we done? What are we doing right now? What are we already planning to kind of do? And explore the other city strategic plans, action plans, work plans that are in play and should be feeding into the update that we're working on together. Before I pass it over to Administrator Bobkowitz, are there any questions for me at this wonderful juncture?
I was reviewing the package and I got down to the bottom. There was like a simple Word document that were the proposed changes that were, what were those voted on or before the council?
Yep, they in 2021.
And is everything that's in the package, have all those proposed things been rolled into the package?
So everything that's in that Word document for proposed changes were adopted and were folded in following the November 15th meeting in 2020.
Okay. Yeah. Stuff at the end was actually already in. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Great question. Yeah.
In some of the material, there's references to other strategic plans, such as the housing strategic plan. Is any of that in scope for this task force to look at peripherally?
We will look at, so things like the human services strategic plan is a great example, or the master mobility plan. That'll March 14th will be a time where we're going to look at some of those plans. And so part of this evening will also be you saying, hey, I'm really more interested in diving deeper on mobility specifically, or on this particular objective. You'll see we likely won't have time for everyone to specialize in every goal area. And so, but the short answer to your question is yes. I'm going to hold myself back because I could take up way too much time. But yes.
So I guess I have a couple questions. So one of them is that I know that a lot of, all the cities have to update their comprehensive plans in 2024 cities and counties. So I'm curious, like, how the strategic plan, kind of fits in with that, because the comprehensive plan is mandated.
Yeah.
Is that something that we're going to cover?
So in our meeting on the 14th, I'm going to bring our long range planning manager's favorite slide that he showed every board and commission that I've been to about where he sees the strategic plan fitting into the flow from the comprehensive plan down to the strategic plan down here. So we won't be talking, we ourselves will not be talking about the comprehensive plan, but we'll understand, excuse me, where the strategic plan fits into that bigger world of planning. Absolutely.
Cool. And then I guess the other question that I had was, in the document, there's a lot of stuff like, there's the strategic plan, and there's also like critical services. So I'm very interested to see like, I imagine that because it's called critical services, those are things that we have to prioritize more, but I'm curious to see kind of how, that actually has happened over the last 5 years. Like, have we just had to spend all our effort on the critical things, and we're not able to dedicate the effort to the strategic stuff as we wanted to? And then in that case, like, how do we, is there a way to change that?
A great tee up for City Administrator Bob Quitz in a moment.
Yeah.
Because of a technical issue, which
I now know about.
I didn't see this till today, but I read through it twice. So is public safety part of the critical issues? Because I saw 2 lines and they just said public safety, and there wasn't any follow up to it like this one. So I just wondered where public safety, or if it's even part of this.
2 great questions. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to City Administrator Bob Quitz to give us a little bit of background on where we've been with the plan in the last 5 years. So those both are perfect questions for that. Any other, though, sort of more, I don't want to use logistics because that's not detail. You know what they say, logistics, all about moving large objects. Okay, without further ado then, I'll turn it over to you. Give it a little bit of a background.
How much time do I have?
You've got 15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow. Well done. The last 5
Yeah.
years at 15 minutes.
If you need
Okay.
longer, you can have longer. But
So you're all jumping ahead, and it's not surprising that you're all jumping ahead, but I do want to give at least a couple of minutes to talk about why there is a strategic plan and how it came about. And then I'll spend the majority of my time talking about how we operationalize the use of the strategic plan, which I think is one of the major issues that you get to grapple with as you look at it. Many of you are acquainted with Mary Lou Pauley. You know her long history in the community. She ran for city council, served on the city council, ran for mayor, was elected mayor. Her top priority when she was elected mayor was to create a strategic plan, because she felt that while the city did lots and lots of really good things, that it really needed some sort of document to encapsulate all of them. Strategic plans are very common in the local government business. Communities will do them. The key is always how you implement them, but many communities do them. And so the city of Issaquah undertook a large community process, mostly during 2018, working with the community, having community meetings, talk about what should be in the plan. Again, mission, vision, values, as well as the 6 goals. And as the goals were identified, then coming down to strategic objectives and action steps. And so in 2019, the plan was adopted by the city council, which then left the city to say, okay, what are we going to do with the strategic plan? I was hired as a city administrator in September of 2019. One of my first responsibilities from Mayor Pauley was to figure that out. So we began that process, and wouldn't you know, a worldwide pandemic hit us about 6 months later. And so it's hard to talk about the strategic plan in the last 5 years and not talk about the pandemic. Because what we tried to do during the pandemic, especially in the early months, was to sort out what is this going to do to city services? what kind of guideposts do we need to help, from the staff's perspective, help the mayor and city council grapple with that. So the strategic plan was the most current recent document that expressed the community's priorities, and we leaned on that. One of the challenges we discovered when we tried to lean on the strategic plan to deal with critical operational issues was that the strategic plan in Issaquah was never designed to be operational. The strategic plan in Issaquah was designed to be aspirational. And that is a very, very important point for you all to understand as you try to process in your mind how we did this, how we got here, and how we've spent the last 5 years or so, trying to grapple with the aspirational part of what the strategic plan is versus the operational challenges we were faced with. And during the pandemic and in the years since, there are certain operational challenges that we were faced with which were not really covered in the strategic plan. Because at the time, circa 2018, they were not community priorities. Because at the time, public safety, both police and fire, were not a focus of this community. I think people felt that Issaquah was a safe place, had a good police department, Eastside Fire and Rescue, which provides fire and emergency medical services, great operation, nothing wrong. It wasn't addressed. And so, as was mentioned a couple minutes ago, in 2021, as we were using the strategic plan as an operational document as well as an aspirational document, we soon discovered that there was a big hole. And that is, how do we not take what is 40 some odd percent of the city budget dealing with police and fire and not have it be part of our strategic plan? So we added it in under the city leadership and services goal. So now that was the major change. I don't have the others in front of me, but I think my recollection, that was the major change of that 2021 amendment to the plan. The other piece of service that, again, was not a main focus in 2018 was human services. We have spent a lot of energy and effort over the last several years getting into the human service business. We have behavioral health specialists, 3 behavioral health specialists that now co-respond with the police department to issues. Those behavioral health specialists are also very deeply involved in homeless issues here, dealing directly with homeless individuals in the community. We also have a 10-room temporary transitional shelter that we operate at Motel 6. Again, none of that was contemplated by the original strategic plan. So as we've lived the strategic plan and as we have looked through each of the goal areas, we've done different things to operationalize them. You've already talked about some of the various strategic plans and other plans that we have that are topic specific. And so many of those have developed in response to the strategic plan, the master mobility plan, the housing plan. We recreated environmental work. We did not have a dedicated citizen group dealing with the environment. There was the Rivers and Stream, former council members helped me. I'm getting my, was it Rivers and Streams was the council committee or the
volunteer?
The volunteer was with Rivers and Streams. They had not met for 3 years prior to my arrival. So there was no environmental group. We, Mayor Pauly and the city council created an environmental board. The first thing that they did was create a climate action plan. So there's been various work done in the 6 goal areas from the strategic plan to do additional analysis prioritization with that. The other thing that we didn't really have 5 years ago was any way to deal with data. And so mayor and council in, was it 21, created the position, and now over those some changes has become part of the position that Dale has. So we have at least the lion's share of one position that focuses on performance measures and data. We had our first set of performance measures, was it in 21? 21. And that has changed and gotten a lot more sophisticated over the last 3 or 4 years. Thanks a lot to Dale's leadership. So we now have performance measures. We now have systems in place to capture data that we really didn't have, at least not as vigorous as we do today. So that's kind of the history of this. So when I think of the strategic plan and how we tried to operationalize it, again, that it's aspirational, not operational, that it did not include public safety, did not include to a significant degree human services. But everything else, rings true. I mean, as you will look around at each of the goal areas, they're all substantial areas, and we've made substantial progress on this. I think one of your challenges is going to be where have we not done enough? Where does there need to be additional emphasis? And where should we be doing this? What should we be doing as far as measurement is concerned? Are we doing a vigorous enough work in the areas of measurement, or do we need to do? So that kind of the history. We keep the council apprised of progress, more or less quarterly. The progress reports are divided into the 6 goal areas. We've posted that on the website. We've created electronic dashboards on a variety of topics, including the implementation of the strategic plan. So there's a transparency issue here as well, that we want to make sure that we're being transparent with the community on the progress and the roles of the boards and commissions. We have each of these goal areas have one or more citizen boards that regularly work on those issues as well. So they're a critical piece of the implementation of the work of the boards and commissions. So that is a very broad overview. I hope.
Yeah, questions.
I didn't know I was doing this until
This morning.
So today, but are there questions?
Yeah, so you mentioned several times the strategic plan designed to be aspirational rather than operational. Is that still the goal with this update of the strategic plan, or are we trying to make it more operational because it seems like we're trying to use it in an operational manner?
I'll answer as myself and others, and the mayor is on. The aspirational piece is really important. I mean, we cannot move forward as a community without the aspirational piece of this. Practically, however, we can't ignore operational pieces. That public safety was not a part of this, was not intended. It was not intended. The world has changed, and I don't think can move forward without a recognition that police, fire, emergency services, human services, justice, we haven't even talked about the courts, and the city prosecutor, the public defender, all of those pieces have grown enormously for us. So I think it needs to remain aspirational, but you can't turn a blind eye to the operation.
Could you give us a preview of what Stephen's going to tell us tomorrow? Because I think it's really important for myself and probably everyone else here to really understand how does the strategic plan get used? What is the time horizon, update frequency? Kind of where does this fit in? And I have a little bit just from my board, but I think it would be really helpful because like some of the questions that we're going to talk about later, I think time horizon is really important. How is this going to be used is really important. So that would be really helpful context for me.
So, it has become a document that we use for operational planning. So as we do a budget, we're now on a 2-year budget. So this is the first 2-year budget the city has done. So we're in the 2nd year of that 2-year budget. The city will begin a process for 25-26. The council already had one meeting on this in February, but that's how it is used. So as we look at operational versus aspirational, there's something as far as budget that gets laid on top of that. There are the variety of plans. I don't know if you have Stephen's slide or not. They're too far ahead of what we're doing. But the strategic plan provides direction. I mean, ultimately, many things require money, and that is the responsibility of the city council. And so the city council, receives the budget from the administration, and then they look at the strategic plan. They look at what the administration is recommending. And in my almost 5 years here, I can tell you that the council, is very thoughtful about that, and they poke and they ask questions because they want to see the aspirational move forward as much as they want to see the operational taken care of. And again, as we've seen changes in our operational needs, the investments that we've had to make in the police department have been significant. And so the money that we spend in police, general purpose funds, general tax dollars, that competes with a lot of other things in the city. So I think one of the important pieces of the revision of the strategic plan is to help the city council grapple with the community's desire on some of these priority issues. If we're spending all this money on public safety and there's limited money to spend on road maintenance, green necklace, improvements in our planning processes, improvements in our human resource processes, more money for recreation programs, where does the prioritization come? And so I think emphasis is a part of this process as well. Here's the piece of this. The comprehensive plan is something that the state of Washington requires all municipalities to do revise every 5 years, 7 years, 5 years. And it's land use based. There are other pieces to the comprehensive plan, but it's primarily land use based. The vision, mission, goals, and policies are within the comprehensive plan. The functional plans, some of which we've already spoken about, because some of those functional plans also then become part of the comprehensive plan. The citywide strategic plan is sort of that midpoint in that. So it's the 50,000 foot, perhaps not the 100,000 foot. And then the budget regulations, project programs, those are all the implementation pieces of it, and then the performance metrics of the measure.
And is there a set frequency with which it's planned to be updated, or is it at will?
The strategic plan, it was originally conceived that it would be 5 years.
So I would, couple questions that I had, because I'm new to all this flowing. So is the comprehensive plan, the visions and goals the same as the strategic plan?
No.
So there's a disconnect there potentially. Yeah.
We hope there's not a disconnect. I think there's just different time horizons.
Right.
So hopefully things blend together.
If it's aspirational for 5 years, then it should be aspirational to reach our comprehensive plan in 20 years.
That's
it should be a living document that adds to and or modifies to.
Under the very best of circumstances, absolutely. Resources and competing, here and now problems are the things that derail that.
One of the things I think to Jamie's question is the time horizon. When I look at the 6 goals, which are wonderful goals, and I asked Tola earlier, I said, wow, we just did our first plan. And that's the top priority of our mayor, as you said, is the strategic plan to get it in place in 2019. That was only 5 years ago there. I would tell you, because these goals have so much, and what you said already was that things change that fast anymore. 6 months after you put it together, you had a pandemic that threw it all apart, right? Anyway, it gave you a lot of information, but what I would highly recommend right off the bat, and I know I'm going 4 meetings ahead, is that every year you take 2 of these goals and for 6 months. So every 3 years, you're updating that 5-year strategic plan, and you take this amount of people and you drill down into mobility one time, right? And because I don't know how much, like you said, you guys, how are we going to prioritize this? That was my next question. The mayor, you guys got a budget cycle coming up. Is there something that's more priority that we should focus on to help the budget cycle that's coming up or not? Anyway, that was just the first thing that came out of my mind is you're grappling with a ton of stuff. Jamie's got a thing that wasn't even part of it. We don't have police and city services that were a part of it. So if we're doing something with a focus group, maybe every 6 months, 2 of these goals every year, then you can really from an aspirational standpoint and operational, maybe come up with some things. So just a thought.
You may want to mention the functional plan, because I think you might be sort of in some ways referring to, are you saying that you don't feel like some of this other than the strategic plan, we're not talking about some of the goals other than?
Well, I don't know if we are or not. I mean, I know that we have to look at the strategic plan and make sure we're focusing on all of that, but we haven't done that since 2019.
Yeah, so
Other
I might
than
just cover
functional.
the functional plans a little bit, because maybe that's what you might be referring to, is just like how that works, how those generally get rolled in.
So each of the functional plans kind of have a different path to them. There's 6 or so up there. I guess I can click through them just initially. The mobility master plan was a concept that came from the strategic plan and was one of the first functional plans out the gate. The climate action plan, I don't think was contemplated as such. I'm looking at Councilmember Hunt and Councilmember March. I don't think it was contemplated as such, other than I think the strategic plan said there should be community planning about community priorities.
And then I think we established the environmental board, and then out of that came.
Right. So, and again, climate action plan is many communities around America have that. Parks plans, again, that's something that Issaquah has had prior to a strategic plan, looking at its parks, looking at both the trees and the paths, as well as facilities. The human services plan was something that came out of the strategic plan. And that has also morphed, just given the circumstances that we've had. Utility plans are largely staff generated. This is the city utilities, mostly water and wastewater. We have a very complicated water system here in Issaquah. It's a mix between water from wells as well as water from the city of Seattle that comes through a third-party agency. And so those have largely been staff-driven. We collect separate dollars through fees and charges for those. The housing plan, I think that also has been on a separate track from the strategic plan. CIP, capital improvement plan, transportation improvement plan, that's also been a traditional prior to strategic planning, where the city would look at its capital projects as well as its transportation projects separately. And then economic development plan, very standard plan that cities would have, and our economic development plans predate the strategic plan too. But when you look at them, they all feed into the strategic plan goals. And so we've tried to marry them together as they have been done or redone. Because right now, we've just adopted a new economic development plan. The housing plan has been revised. We had a water service plan adopted a couple of years ago. The ICAP was adopted about 3 years ago. We're finishing up a new park plan. So these things have separate timelines that are separate and apart from the strategic. Yes.
So I'm just trying to see how these things go together. So are we going to be reviewing the functional plans? Does the strategic plan impact the functional plans, or is it?
So I think how the strategic plan, impacts the functional plans is the functional plans become your actions.
Okay, there we go.
Because the functional plans say not just we're going to make sure we have clean water, but it says we're going to put this many lines of new water pipe in. We're going to deal with this kind of water treatment. And so there are actions within these functional plans that would then be measures within the strategic plan.
So are these the strategic plans, are the more aspirational, we want to open like more parks, whatever. And then the parks functional plan is taking the aspiration and saying we are doing this many acres of new park.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
And so mobility is probably the best example.
Right.
So the mobility master plan came out of this because it came out of the strategic plan because there was no functional plan to actually do this. People said, we want to get around, we want it to be easier, we want to be less car focused. How do we do all that? And so the mobility master plan provided very specific projects and objectives within that.
So the strategic plan that we are all working on here is more of aspirational, or like an idea of the direction that things are moving in, and then
with the objectives and the actions.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So,
yeah.
I guess that you're setting the framework of thought of like we aspire to do these things and then city council and the boards and commissions look at the tools to get that done, right?
Absolutely.
We aspire to have better water is in the strategic plan, and then somebody comes in the utility plan and says, let's go get better water.
And this is what better water means.
Right.
And from that planning to continue the water piece, just, we had a system, we have, some of our water wells are impacted by what's known as PFAS, the, forever chemicals. And so part of this water planning was, what do we do about this? What is the most efficient, effective way to do that? And actually from that planning came a new plan that previously had not been on the table, which allowed us to take more City of Seattle water at less cost to us and put off building additional plants. But so it allowed us to provide that goal, which was clean water, but it challenged us to look at different ways to do it.
And which plan helps us prioritize between actions with competition among resources?
That's your lucky job.
That's the strategic plan essentially, right?
So,
And I would say there are things that don't have a functional plan, or they do, they just don't have one of these big fancy functional plans that need to be in this conversation too. And the 14th, I know you've got all these questions. The 14th, we're going to have the folks that are the owners of these functional plans here to tell you more about them. Because the two of us are not as steeped in those. You more than me, but.
that's perfect. That's perfect. But let me just clarify.
Sure.
So when you said that we had the pandemic come and we didn't have the knowledge, if you will, or the understanding of how the emergency services was part of the strategic plan, right?
You know, we were faced with making choices.
Right.
And if we had gone to strategic plan and said, we're only going to do what's in the strategic plan, then we would have said, great, well, we'll just cut the police department and take all the money that we've lost and put it into the 6 goals.
Okay.
And we realized pretty quickly that wasn't practical.
So my question is that if we're thinking about the strategic plan and that has now happened, the pandemic, and we came out of that with a bunch of knowledge, and you said that the city services around that piece is now under the city leadership and services group, whatever that is. So that would be potentially a place that we look at aspirationally, what else, or take the learnings that we got from the pandemic and put them now into the plan.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let me clarify some. I thought that we said that at the middle of the pandemic, there was a review of the plan, which came up with adding this. Was that not true? Is it the
Yes.
first revision of the plan?
In November 2021.
That was the only revision that occurred after.
All right, so there has been,
There's been one revision at the city council meeting.
got it. All right.
Because
So-
they had a very similar conversation to what you're having here today.
Right.
And they said, this doesn't make sense. We need to make that adjustment because as we're using this plan to make decisions, to not have police and fire included didn't make sense.
So the aspirational thought that Scott's talking about went already into the plan to put city leadership and services in there
Right.
in November 2021.
Right. Well, city leadership and services was already a goal of the original plan. What changed was the addition of an objective and some actions that were not there.
Got it.
So it was the city leadership and services goal already had existed.
Got it.
It's tough stuff.
Yeah, it is tough stuff.
Because what we tried to do in Issaquah is we try to balance a lot of things that a lot of communities don't care about, or a lot of communities don't see as a priority. This community, for a long period of time, has said there are certain things that are really important, things that make Issaquah Issaquah. And I think one of Mayor Pauly's great desires in creating the strategic plan and now asking you all to review it is to ensure that we don't get run over like many communities do with the here and now, and that we retain as much as we can focus on the things that make this community special. That's a big part of this. Yes, sir.
One of the things that I encountered
early on when I moved here was something I'd never encountered before that I thought was just terrific. And that was the community survey. I'd never been anywhere where they went out and said, what are your priorities? You know, and I believe that those survey responses were not just put on the shelf somewhere. I haven't seen, are we still, I mean, I know we're still doing that, but is it every 2 years?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years still?
So we did it last year. Can we go back? We haven't talked about the circle.
Oh,
Have time to
yeah,
talk about the
yeah,
circle?
you do.
Okay. So another thing that we religiously try to follow is this circle. And this circle shows how the strategic plan impacts our operations from a budget perspective. So let's see, we will pick up. So we begin a year with the adoption of a budget. And so the budget's adopted at the end of the calendar year. We then look at a work plan. So we have a document that is a work plan that for each of the departments, how we're going to be implementing the budget and how that reflects the goals and objectives of the strategic plan. We then look at our performance measures. So most of our performance measures are annual. We look at them at the beginning, the first quarter of each year, and report that out to the city council, which we did in February, beginning of February.
We will do in April.
We will do it in April.
They're due tomorrow. Okay.
The community survey results then also get included. The community survey happens every other spring. We hire a firm. They, I think it's 4,000? No. There's a certain fixed number of surveys that need to be returned, and they work until they get that number. And it asks the community what they think about Issaquah, what are the good things, what are the bad things. We can provide that information to you. I think it's still on the website.
It was in fact pre-work for tonight. So.
It was in the packet.
Oh, okay, great. And so the city council then hears that last year, for example, the survey results as well as the performance measure information. We then last year did a report to the community with the community survey results as well as the performance measure results. Then we have the strategic plan adjustment. So that happened in 2021 with the change with police. The council has not adjusted the plan since then. We then start a process of budget. We've had workshops with the council, usually in the summer leading into the fall, where we take the information we've learned and talk with the council about that. We then try to have a workshop with the community once the budget is out, explaining that, and then it goes back to budget document. So that circle is something we try to be very mindful of, and we've worked very hard over the last couple of years on that performance evaluation community survey piece and the report to community gather input piece. And I'll be honest, it's still a work in progress.
And some of these are yearly, some of them are not.
Well, the
Can
community
you plan
survey,
adjustment, you jump?
we've tried to ask the council each year if there's a need for the strategic plan or any adjustments. And there's been a reluctance, I think, to change it unless something really big happened. And I think the pandemic was considered really big. And so that was the only time thus far that the plan had been adjusted.
I was thinking of like Eastside Fire, the mobile vaccines, and then also turning in the Washington, Sammamish State Park. So things like that, I'm sure were discussed. Planning and with Eastside Fire and stuff like that. That might have been one of the revisions.
It wasn't a revision to the strategic plan. It was an operational revision. I mean, we did many things we've never had to do before with, the mayor had a COVID task force, which you're on.
Yeah.
And
just the restaurants, pushing everything outside, closing Front Street.
Right. And so those are mostly operational things. They're not so much strategic planning things. Those are operational. Any other questions? We've kind of gone a little far afield.
Yeah, we have gone a little far afield, but Councilmember Mertz.
Yeah, I just want to say, before we had a strategic plan, to help understand the role of the strategic plan, before we had a strategic plan, it was very much hurting 7 hyperactive cats. And so you would have a meeting like this once a year, and people would be like, what should we work on this year? And people would be like, hey, we should think about a new pool or whatever, right? There was a certain Brownian motion randomness to what we came up with, and some of it was responsive to the community. But so, you know, when urgent things came up during COVID, it's not like, well, it wasn't in our strategic plan, so we can't do it. It's more just that when any random cat came along and said, maybe we should do this, you know, it's like, well, maybe we should, but, you know, let's weigh that against what the community has told us are priorities. And if you want to do something different than that, it's not that you can't do it, but it better be urgent, like a global pandemic. And so that's the value to me as one of 7 that the strategic plan brings is, you know, less hurting hyperactive cats.
That is a great transition, both because we've talked about a lot, and I want to give you time to actually go and take a look at the plan that we're working within, knowing that we will have time to engage the experts on some of the functional plans that feed, I think in some ways feeds cyclically into where we're playing. Any last thought from you though before I move us forward?
Thank you for doing this. I am personally a major beneficiary of your work, so thank you very much.
Yes. So we're going to do a little bit of an exploration. I'm going to adjust the times a little bit to make sure that we still have plenty of time, but to keep us reasonably within our stated amount of time. Around the room, there are 6 stations, 1 for each of our 6 goal areas. You'll see when you get up in just a moment, one of the posters has the goal itself for that goal area, the opportunity as stated for that goal area, and the background. As we've touched on in the last few minutes, last 20 some odd minutes, the background has changed. A lot has happened in the last 5 years. And so I would invite you, in front of everyone should be some Post-it notes. If you don't have some, I have many more. But what I invite you to do on this pass around, we're not going to get up and move yet, but using the Post-it notes, using a writing utensil, if you need one, I have an entire box of pens, is to read through that opportunity and background and note what for you remains the same and what from your perspective as a resident of this community has changed. If something has changed, jot it down and add it. If something you feel like is the same, you can underline it or star it. These are ours to work with. There are posters. And then also as you're on that goal area, taking a look at the objectives and the potential actions. I'm going to leave these questions up so you can keep looking at them. But what objectives do you want to learn more about? What questions do you have about some of the particular objectives and actions? And again, would invite you to use those sticky notes and sort of jot down and leave any comments next to any objectives or actions. We're going to come back to these. I'm not throwing away your sticky notes. You know, we're going to live and breathe in these posters for the next few meetings. And so you can leave them up there. If you want to leave your initials on it, you can. But we're going to do I'm going to try to give us 7 minutes, but it might mean that you don't make it to all 6 stations. So if there are some that you really want to prioritize, I'd invite you to do that. But I will let you know when every 7 minutes has passed. So if you're like, I really want to get to 4, great. You will definitely have time to get to 4 stations, but you may want to prioritize them. Any clarifying questions before I let us loose?
Just one, and I'm hopefully just summing up what some of the past conversation was. Am I correct that the goals are something that will likely persist beyond 5 years, but the objectives and actions are things that aspirationally we would like to accomplish within 5 years? So that's the framing for our evaluation on the board.
100%. Okay, your first 7 minutes starts now. Take another moment or two at whichever poster you're at, knowing that these will not disappear. Hopefully they won't haunt your dreams tonight, but they will be here. Actually, we're going to dig into them in just a moment, one step further. But I'll invite just everyone to take another minute, and then when we're back in our seats, we'll do the last little activity we're going to do tonight. Okay, the last thing we're going to do tonight, because I think it will be very challenging to dive deep on the 14th into every single goal area, just given the limits of time that we have. I'm gonna ask you to do your first prioritization activity, just for you personally, thinking about the passions that you bring, the knowledge that you bring, the identities, going back to our question at the top, the why Issaquah for you. And you've got 3 stickers, and if you don't, I have extras. And I invite you to jot your initials down. I feel like no one's initials match, and I feel like I checked that before writing the instructions down. I think I'm still correct. And you're not going to need 5 minutes most likely, but maybe you'd like to move around and again look at what others have written on the posters. I'm going to ask you to just put your stickers with your initials next to either the goal area or the objective, or maybe it's a particular action that you're really interested in learning more about or weighing in on further. So on the 14th, when we're back together again, we'll have city staff experts in the room who know the ins and outs of each of these objectives and goal areas. And so you'll have a chance to dig a little deeper with them. And we will likely, I'm not saying you're only going to do 3, but I want to get a sense of where is this group's energy already, just in this first review. And then if there are some natural working groups within the group, it's helpful to know. Jason, quick question.
Are these color coded for any reason? Like
Nope.
Oh, yeah, so it's not.
No color coding. This is a very, nope, just this is the pair that they were in, or the grouping they were in. So just initials on each, and you can go ahead and place your stickers where you like them. And then when you're done, come on back to your seats and we'll close out for the evening.
We are going to, I'm just curious. Will there be like part of that? What have we done?
So it'll be a combination of things. So we'll keep it these actions, and also we've had some actions that have been added that are aligned with these objectives. Also, since system, some of those will be added in as well. Okay. And then of course we'll have staff here to kind of talk about here's what we're currently doing. That's not.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, I was wondering where, like, it was like the particular one or just like.
That's good enough.
Okay, I'll
If
just.
you're
go
like,
there.
wow, I really want to know. Like if there's one in particular, yes, but that's good.
Thank you.
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Overall.
Okay.
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah.
Last time I saw you.
Yeah, no, we made it out okay. Appropriately. Alright. Yeah, I was in Evanston, Illinois, yeah.
That's right.
10 years.
It's been 6 years now.
Almost 9.
I'm not, well, you're all doing it. I considered,
Yeah, come on.
I know, but the shirt's like way warmer.
Oh, okay, right up the road there.
Man.
You're gonna show up to our next meeting fully decked out, I can tell.
I only have shirts, and I think I'm possibly gonna be out of
Oh,
town.
yeah, you're gonna join virtually, yeah.
But I'll have, you know what, I'm gonna have a virtual background.
Yes.
That's gonna just blow you all out of. I'll make it to move.
I gotta make fun of Steven because him and I.
Oh, yeah.
Actually,
It's
no.
the ITC logo, but it's actually like, but with it like a real picture that moves. So I don't know how to do the picture that moves.
Him and I are just.
I'll-
Oh,
I have 2 dates that conflict with PPC.
yeah.
13th and
I wonder who he's sending, because he told me.
I don't know, but I gotta call him up.
Find out. Okay. Yeah, really, I was gonna say, yeah, everyone's transportation experience on the way here.
I live
Really?
2 miles and it took 12 minutes. Could have done it.
Took you 5.
Yeah.
Well, this is just a tip of the toe into the work we're about to do. As I feel like I've said the date, March 14th, so many times. Pi Day, we'll be back together. Here, Tibbetts Manor, 6 p.m. I anticipate it will be a slightly longer meeting, given that we're going to be starting to dig into the many excellent questions that you surfaced this evening. Diving deeper into specific goal area objectives, actions, and the progress that we've made. And the purpose is going to be to build really a deeper understanding of the efforts that the city's already been making, and start to prepare you to think about what are the revisions to the objectives and the actions that you may want to recommend. With that, I will turn it over to our chair to close this out.
Okay, I guess Dale, I know, is this like, or do we have any other business or any folks who would have any announcements they'd like to make before we close?
Do you have a list of the upcoming meetings? I know great about sending them all of us, but
I do. I will go back in the deck here very quickly to bring up the meetings one more time. And I will send out again. I'm happy to send out again. There have been a couple requests for a couple items to be sent out, but again, here are the dates. They will all be here. They're all Thursdays except for one, which takes place on a Wednesday, because our regular Thursday meeting conflicts with one of the holidays of utmost significance on our religious and cultural calendar. So we do not hold meetings on those evenings. So we need to shift ourselves to Wednesday.
His wife's birthday, an excused absence.
Sure.
I'm serious.
She's the one with your cell phone, so I think, I won't even be able to get a hold of you otherwise, so.
Last kid graduating college.
Definitely.
May 9th.
Let me know ahead of time if you anticipate you will not be here, so we can make sure that our alternates are ready and so that we can ensure that we have quorum. Everyone's life is incredibly rich and incredibly busy. We are really, really, really happy that you are here to dig into this topic with us, and it should not preclude you from also being able to celebrate very important milestones in your lives. So, and you probably don't need to tell all of the group right now your holidays. So you can reach out to me separately for any sort of excused absences. But yeah, Kelly and then Scott.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, so does attending virtually count as attending for the purposes of?
I'll be fine.
So next meeting, we're gonna have the functional, which is more of the operational plans. And are we gonna hear from each one of those functional areas?
We will not have time for you to hear from every single one of them. We will do a similar sort of move into a space and get some time to dig in. We won't.
I guess what I'm trying to find out is the leader of those functional groups going to be here, all of them?
Someone familiar with each of those functional plans will be here. It may not be like the manager, but it will be someone who's.
Now, since what I understood is the operational plans are different than the strategic plans, is there a way that we can get those prior to, maybe? I don't want to have anything that's confidential, but I mean, I would love to read through them more so that I'm more prepared, because 2.5 hours goes real quick.
Well, they are all, first of all, they're all available on our website.
Okay,
and
great.
yes, I will organize.
We want to start reading tonight.
Yeah. You can,
No, not tonight. I think it's going to be a little whiskey and coke after that. No.
Well, the plans go better with you.
But no, okay, good. Perfect.
Yes, so none of it is private or confidential.
Yeah.
But you can Google any of them. You can Google Issaquah Master Mobility Plan. All of those things exist in the public record for you to access at any time. But I will make sure they're part of the packet.
That's not what. Thank you.
All right.
Now that we've all shared our beverages of choice on the public record, I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Yeah, so, well, it is 7:59 PM, and I adjourn this first meeting of the Strategic Plan Task Force. Our next meeting is March 14th, as you can see on the slide. And thank you all for your very enthusiastic participation, and I look forward to more of these meetings.
Here.